Tonight on Let It Rip, it feels like we're paying more and getting less, but how much of that is actually true? Sure, gas and grocery prices are up, but overall inflation actually slowed down from March to April. Republicans blaming the president for the high post-pandemic prices, but we're debating if there's anything he can actually do. But first, speaking of President Biden, as a November rematch between him and former President Trump looms, many say one's too old while the other is too angry.
And when I was vice president, things were kind of bad during the pandemic. And what happened was, Barack said to me, go to Detroit and help fix it.
We have a corrupt judge, and we have a judge who's highly conflicted, and he's keeping me from campaigning.
Statements like those have many voters asking, is this the best we have? We're debating how they can light the fire and voters die for something new. It starts now. Time now to let it rip with Detroit City Council member Coleman Young II and Republican State Senator Jim Runstead. Fox 2 anchored attorney Charlie Langton with us as always. You know, some people are saying this is more of a rhetorical question. Are these two guys running for office too old, too tired to do the job? And we begin with Mr. Runstead. What do you think? I mean, Donald Trump every day is emerging from a courtroom. He looks tired. He looks frustrated. And he looks like he's running out of patience. Is he ready for the job?
Oh, he's ready for the job. I'll tell you, if anyone at this table was being put through what he is, being in the courtroom, not being allowed to defend yourself, all of these charges by these states, this cockamamie charge against him now, and the guy sleeps consistently 3 hours. Everyone I know that knows him, he sleeps 3 hours a night, gets up and goes like a machine.
But is that sustainable?
Can't find himself out of his own basement.
Is that sustainable? 77 years old under such a stressful duress as you speak of these court charges that he's always having to face. Can he survive this into an election year and then perform as president? You know,
and as people age, there's all different kinds of people. And I saw him at the CPAC convention in February, and he was on the teleprompter. He said, I got to go off the teleprompter, because this reminds me of a story. He went out about 20 minutes of the most hilarious one-liners, just all ad-libbing. And then when he got to the end of it, said, no, he immediately went back to where he was on the teleprompter. It was just like nobody could have done a better routine than he did. At that age, Biden, you turn that teleprompter on, he doesn't know his own name.
Well, I think in the State of the Union address, we followed his speech with what was written in the teleprompter, and we saw what he did, which was ad-lib, and he challenged Republicans in the gallery there, saying, you want to pass that bill? He was talking back to people. It seemed like he was pretty on, but there are moments, of course, and I don't think anyone can deny this, that both of these men are showing their age and showing the level of stress they're going through. Coleman, do you have trust in this, in Mr. Biden, or do you think he's a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, as investigators had cited him in that report?
Rube, you look like a newborn baby. You look beautiful, man.
So
Thank you for having me. It's been too long.
I feel like one.
It's been too long. Charlie, hardest working man, show me. It's been too long. I thought you lost my number.
No, man. You're here for a reason.
Be here with you, man.
So Biden, is he too old for the job?
Well, listen, Biden's not old. He's a classic. Okay, and I think he has the most experience. 11 million jobs created. You just talked about inflation from where it was to where it is now. $300 billion invested in manufacturing. 400,000 jobs of those manufacturing jobs created in Michigan. He's reducing student loan debt. I think that he has one of the best economic records of any president ever. I definitely think.
But does he always know where he is, what he's doing? And the reason I asked that question and what he's talking about, because we know that he was just in Detroit a few days ago, and he talked about having to help Mike Duggan because Barack Obama sent him during the pandemic when he was vice president, mixing and matching events, calling the Egyptian president, the Mexican president, saying, hey, you know what, red states and blue states, what about the green states out there? I mean, at some point, these are fundamentals that anybody should know if they want the job. Is he going to be okay as a Democrat, do you believe, moving forward?
Well, listen, let's not forget that that when he was president, former president Donald Trump said that planes flew during the American Revolution. So this is not somebody who necessarily aware of where he's at.
But is Joe Biden aware?
It also talked about running against Barack Obama when he was actually running against Nikki Haley. So this is not a guy who's, you know, he talked about Frederick Douglass as though he was still alive. So this is not somebody who's already been there. Now, is there room for improvement? Of course there is. There always is.
And is there time for improvement? movement, though, with an 81-year-old man.
But let me say this. I think that his mind and his body should be in a medical journal. I think the fact that him, an 81-year-old, has the record that he's had, done the accomplishment that he's had, do the achievements that he's had, I think that this is a man who has done a great job, and we need to keep him in there for 4 more years. Democracy is on the ballot this year, and we cannot go back to what we had with January 6th and Donald Trump.
All right, so we had Dave Dulio, the Oakland University professor of politics, who was on our show not long ago, and he said, I'm not sure that these 2 guys are going to be the guys still standing come November. Charlie, do you still believe that there's a question as to whether or not both these guys are going to make it?
He's dreaming.
The professor's wrong. These guys, they're the nominees.
But they're going to make it. They're going to make it health-wise.
Yes.
Oh, yes. These guys are pros. They're pros. They've been doing this forever. And yes, listen, Trump's 77 and Biden's not 81. They're roughly the same age. Of course, they can do this. Yes. Would I want to be in court every single day? No, I don't want to do that. But yet, Biden, look at the schedule he's keeping. You interviewed them both. I mean, you see the changes, but I've seen you change, too. I've seen me change a little bit. Sometimes that teleprompter, it's hard to read sometimes. Listen, we all make mistakes. The thing is, the fundamental, listen, can these guys do it? And the answer, in my opinion, is yes, they can. I don't think age is a factor. Now, you tell me there's some medical issues, real medical issues, that may be something different. But age for right now, and actually, I think, to some extent, if we were talking about a job and you started mentioning age, there's some legal issues there about some age discrimination.
Well, the voter is the employer. And if the voter decides to discriminate because of age, that voter can do that.
For a long time in this country, we did not put age as a preclusion to get a job. And I don't think we should do it for president. Now, if there's symptoms, if there's real symptoms, not just messing up a teleprompter, then yes.
But Jim said, if there's a minimum, we do have age issues when it comes to
symptoms. The court said we can't even prosecute the guy because he's got no memory left. He's a dementia patient.
If there's a minimum age to become president, should there be an age at which we say, okay, it's time to sunset this?
No, this is up to the voters. But if you look at some of the gaffes that Trump makes, every one of us in front of cameras, we've all made gaffes. Every single person. You can't go through life without talking publicly and making a gaffe.
How many did you make today?
How many do we probably all make one today? But what we're talking about with Biden is somebody who is walking across the lawn and the security details running and trying to redirect him. He's got some mental issues that are way over what you should be trusting somebody that has his hand hovering over the button. This guy is just being controlled from behind. And there is so many examples. Your listeners have all seen these examples.
Okay, but listen, but if you really want to play that game, and unfortunately both sides have, we know that former President Trump said that President Biden would lead us into World War II. He called his wife Melania Mercedes. He didn't know how old his son was. These are personal, really fundamental things that people should know. Your wife's name, your son's age. I understand what you're saying about numbers, getting a number wrong here and there. But to say that you've met with people that you have met with, to call Nikki Haley Nancy Pelosi, don't you think that points to a real cognition issue?
What is that when they were, I didn't see that, were they arguing? And he doesn't particularly like Nikki Haley. Maybe he was doing that on purpose. And
he's done that a few times.
Between World War II and III, could you make that mistake? He could cause World War II instead of seeing III. I mean, that's something anybody of any age can do. To see someone like me walking off the grass and the security, no, over here, and then I don't know where the teleprompter is. I don't know where. I mean, this guy has issues that are terrifying as the president.
Bottom line is, if we get out of this, and I hate to say it, but we have, it seems in this country, an inability to separate the human being from the party and to be able to say that my candidate is flawed. It seems like no one who's a Biden supporter, you say anything negative about Biden and his camp, people say, how dare you do that? Are these men fundamentally flawed, and should there be better people who are running for office?
Well, let me say this. I think that President Biden's record is distinguished. I also just wanted to comment real quickly. Remember, President Trump also said that the way in which we should deal with a hurricane is by nuking it. So I don't necessarily think that, again, he is the best person to be in office, one. But secondly, let me just say, listen, everyone knows, including the Biden team, that he's America's favorite grandpa. Everybody knows that. Everybody's embracing that. Listen, I think that what he has done, what he has achieved, what he's done for the American people and the leadership that he is providing. He has distinguished himself, and he deserves an opportunity to run.
Do Democrats deserve better?
I think that America has received so many great things from President Biden. I just think that's the wrong question. I think that the only reason why we're asking this question is because of his age. If he was younger with the type of record that he would have, I think he would be a shoo-in for president. And so I think that's something we need to talk about. Ageism is in whole, in general. Don't just look at the man's age, also look at what he's done. And don't compare Joe Biden to the almighty. Compare him to the alternative. And we can do better than the alternative.
I agree with Coleman. He would make a good grandpa for somebody. That's what he should be, somebody's grandpa. He'd be out there playing in the flowers with somebody. He should not be the president of the United States. It's terrifying with his record, throwing open the border where every terrorist are coming, millions and millions of people we know nothing about, flooding the nation with people illegally, simply to get them to increase the votes for congressional districts and for the electoral college. That's what he's doing. Totally illegal. It's unbelievable what he's doing to this country. Inflation is exploding. The debt is $2 trillion a year, borrowing every single year. You know, when in the pandemic we lost all the jobs, some of the jobs come back mostly part-time. Oh, we've had an increase in jobs. Of course, we have the pandemic. So
what about the fact that we thought we would be we thought that we would be in a recession right now? We're not. 15 million jobs created. The Dow hit 40,000 last week, and people are saying, look at the economy, it's a mess. The prices need to come down. That's true.
Yes.
But do you think the economy is really a wreck under Biden?
The reason we're doing so well is we are deficit spending. We are at 130% of GDP. The highest before that was a little over 100%. After World War II, we're paying off the debts. There is no giant war we're paying off. We are deficit spending to pump the economy. They want to pump it, pump it, pump it. It's going to implode, and we're going to have inflation go blasting. And people are not aware of what's coming.
Charlie Langton says, go ahead.
I'll just get ready to say the reason why we have the deficit that we have is because Donald Trump put a $2 trillion tax cut and did not pay for it. I'm just surprised the Republicans now all of a sudden
and Nikki Haley said that. Nikki Haley said that on the debate stage, pointed her finger squarely at Donald Trump and pointed at the debt that Trump created, and now she's endorsing Donald Trump. Yeah. I'm not endorsing, but voting for him.
That's because that was back during the pandemic. There's no pandemic, and he's still spending $2 trillion a year.
Charlie got his hands on the pulse of what people are talking about on the road, and he's taking Let It Rip right there.
President Biden, 81 years old. Donald Trump, 77 years old. Are they too old to run?
Kinda.
Are these too old to be president?
They are.
It is, but I don't see any logical choices at this point.
Well, they're both well, a lot of bad things.
You can say it. Just let it out.
No. They're both.
Not to be like too crass or anything, but I think the older you get within the age, it gets harder to you get a little out of touch. I just think it's like a little bit out of their time.
What role does age play in being president?
Well, you got to be cognitive and coherent to run the country.
What happens when you get too old being president?
You lose your faculties.
Do you think there should be an age limit to running?
It probably wouldn't hurt.
65, 70? I don't know, maybe 45 to 70.
I'm not 80 yet, and I'm already having memory issues, so.
Charlie Langton has a way to get people to talk in a way that no one else does. Good stuff, Charlie. Thank you. Still ahead tonight, need gas or groceries? Hope you've got some money in your bank account because it's going to cost you. Republicans blame the president, but we're debating how much of it is actually his fault. Next. Back now, Let It Rip, debating how much President Biden can actually do about the inflation issue. I'm joined now by Detroit City Council member Mary Waters and Oakland County Republican Party Executive Board member Aaron Tobin. Fox 2 anchor and attorney Charlie Langton with us as well. Let's talk about this, and let's try our best in this conversation to take the emotion. You can have a little bit of it. But the numbers. Let's talk about the numbers here just to begin the discussion. The U.S. inflation rate right now is 3.36%. 3%. It used to be 9% when at the worst of it. I think it was back in June of 2022. Do we credit President Biden for bringing the inflation rate down to 3.3%? Mary Waters?
Well, let me just say this. People are still hurting due to inflation. If you have a senior citizen who goes to the grocery store right now, their paycheck is not changing. Social Security has not changed, but the prices are still going up. Inflation is hurting the working poor and the middle class. Now, that's what's still happening. You go to buy a dozen of eggs, you've got inflation. People can't even buy new cars the way that they used to due to inflation. They're hurting.
And so bottom line right now, when you look at the rate of inflation, these numbers, it was a 40-year high of 9%, something like that back in 2022. Now it's down a little bit to 3-point-something%. Aaron Tobin, it's down to 3-point-something%, 3.3%. Good enough?
I don't know where they're getting the 3%. You look at oil, it's up 38%. You look at mortgages now. My mortgage was like 3-4%. It's like 7-8-9% now. People can't even afford to get a mortgage today.
But the interest rate for a mortgage right now is hovering closer to 5.
Yeah, so it used to be like 2 or 3. It was much lower. You know, in statistics, you can learn that if you're standing with 1 foot in fire and 1 foot on ice, statistically you're comfortable, but we know it's uncomfortable. I don't know where this 3% is. I know when I go to the grocery store, I get a lot less now for even $50. I used to be able to fill up my cart for $50.
Okay, let's talk.
I get a little bit.
Let's break this down a little bit for the people at home. So there's inflation, which is the cost of goods, right? Cost of stuff that we go out buy. That includes groceries. It includes gas. But big oil and also grocery stores are also responsible for the prices that they keep high, even when inflation isn't in play. Charlie, isn't that true?
That may be true, so cut the prices and help the people. I think Mary is right. I think people on fixed incomes, like senior citizens, for example, I think they are hurting. And I also agree to some extent, I think, Aaron, I look at inflation in a lot of different ways. Yeah. But I do think the housing market is a big deal. People who are, many cannot afford a mortgage, besides all the requirements to get a mortgage. And whether it's 5%, I think I want to talk to your mortgage company after the show. But
well, that's the average right now. It's hovering closer to 5%.
Well, that's great. But that's fantastic. But the cost, people are renting now because they can't get a mortgage. And the problem is the wages are not going up accordingly. People are not giving out big raises anywhere. And so that's a problem. Now, is that the president's fault? What can the president do? I think when the Fed ups the interest rate, I think that is a problem. I don't know how many more increases we need before they try to bring the cost down. To me, the interest rates have been going up way too much.
So do you blame the president? Do you blame the president for this, Mary Waters?
Well, people can't live on credit cards. We've got to do something about it. You know, The Economist has a very sophisticated way of talking about this, but we need to break it down. We need to teach our consumers, help our consumers to understand their buying power, their spending power. The consumers can help control it if they understood. The economists are just way over their head, and it's incumbent upon, at the federal level, the Congress, people here at the state level, to simplify things so that average consumer can understand how they can control the prices, because they can.
But Trump versus Biden, when it comes to a showdown over here, when it comes to inflation, billionaires should pay their fair share. They should pay a lower tax rate than a school teacher or a firefighter. And right now, we know that that's not necessarily the case when it comes to billionaires. That's a problem, isn't it?
Well, of course it is. Billionaires don't pay enough taxes, period. They just don't.
Aaron, do you think Donald Trump would change that? Do you think he would make sure that billionaires were paying their fair share?
Billionaires are donating big bucks to the Democratic Party. They are not going to, the Democrats will not charge. Democrats are in charge. If they wanted to change that, right now they could do it.
But if Trump wants to get into office.
To all parties. I mean, not just the Democratic Party, though. I mean, they donate. And that's how they control things.
I was going to say, you talk to billionaires out there, they were very happy with Donald Trump when he was in office for many reasons. Yeah. The tax rate being one of them. Do you believe that Donald Trump will fairly treat these billionaires and a school teacher with the same hand?
I actually do, and I believe that Trump has said that it's balanced in favor of the billionaires. He said this at one of the debates. He said that with Hillary Clinton, he said the reason he says, yeah, I didn't pay a lot of taxes because I'm smart, but I didn't break any laws. I followed the laws, and I have good accountants. The reason we have these tax breaks to the billionaires, he said this to Hillary Clinton, is because you and your friends want these tax breaks. They're not taking them away from
So let's talk about excuses that have been made. So far, or reasons or attributions for the reason why we've had these issues. This president and his press secretary have said it was first COVID that changed the story of how inflation went. And after COVID, it was the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And then after that, it was shrinkflation to blame. Could it just be Bidenomics to blame here, Mary Waters?
No, I'm not going there. No, not with, you know, blaming this on President Biden.
I'll go there.
Why is that? Why not?
Because we also, but what he has to do, both he and the Congress, is to educate the consumers. The consumers actually have the power. If you believe that it's too high, if you believe that that milk costs you too much money, those eggs are costing you too much money. If you recall, both McDonald's and Target have changed. What did they decide to do? Lower prices because they want the consumers to come back and buy. We need to spend time simplifying things, educating the consumers so that they can understand the power that they have.
I'm not sure it helps that we're in a war, too, though. I think we're spending a lot of money in a war, and I think that there is a relation.
Oh, my God.
I'm not an economist, but I think that there's a relation when we're spending billions of dollars on the war effort in Ukraine and in Israel. I think that we should take a look at that, and I think that if we had changed some of the approach as to where government money is being put.
And Charlie, I'm glad you said that because, you see, I did a resolution at City Council that talked about specifically that. Bring the money home. Spend it on us. We need the help here. Our people are hurting.
But do you think this president has spent too much? You talk about $144 billion in student loan debt that he's talking about. We're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, which has cost money, the COVID relief acts. The spending of the money is what got us into this problem in the first place. Can the president be blamed for that?
It's exactly
too much spending.
It's the president's fault.
He's also sending a whole lot of money, billions and billions of dollars over there for war. Charlie just told you about it.
But on top of that, he spent a lot at home on those acts, right?
But you're helping people here who are paying their taxes.
You're transferring debts from the students to me. There is no such thing as loan forgiveness. Loan forgiveness means I'm taking a loan from Joe student and I'm giving it to everyone sitting at this table. It's illegal, it's unlawful, it's unethical.
I don't believe it's illegal.
President Biden, it is absolutely illegal. The president has no authority. The Congress rules the purse strings in the United States. It's in the Constitution.
But Aaron, maybe not everyone may need the student loan debt, but relief. But there are people out there in positions that you're not in, I'm not in, and you're not in, that really could use this help in terms of that kind of relief.
So let's talk about the oil things. Let's talk about what Biden's horrific thing, what he's done to the oil industry. He comes into office, he's with this green energy business, and he says, hey, oil companies, you got 10 years left. And then he took away all the places where he can drill on government property. That raised the prices exponentially.
But Aaron Tobin, you sat on this set not only but 8 months ago talking to me about how we're on the brink of a recession. This economy is a wreck because of Bidenomics and because of Biden. Here we are with the Dow hitting 40,000 last week. We're talking about inflation that's dropped to 3.3%, not hitting the grocery store yet, perhaps, but a much brighter picture and no recession in sight. Are you surprised by that?
No. We are in a recession. I was correct 8 months ago.
We're not in a recession. We are currently not in a recession.
On the street. Get Charlie out there.
A recession is not an emotional response.
Are living check to check.
A recession is a technical term, not an emotional response.
Record credit card debt. People do not have money to invest. People are doing without on a lot of things, Charlie.
There are always winners and losers when inflation or recession. But let's talk about inflation for right now. The banks are going to win because the interest rates are higher. The people that make the war machine, they're going to win because there's an effort to make those. We need those war machines. So there's always winners and losers. But I think we're talking about is the people, though.
The middle class are losing.
That's the problem. I do see that. And I think that we do need to do something about basic stuff. And I think that when people vote, because I think this is going to be a big campaign issue, are you better? Does your dollar buy more today than it did years ago? And I tell you, if the answer is no, I think that
has
hurts
Donald Trump
one
done
person.
enough to convince voters that he's a guy who's going to be as kind to the school teacher and the firefighter as he would a billionaire?
I absolutely
Aaron?
think he would, and he has. And if you look at people on the street that are being interviewed on Fox 2 and other media, people, and especially in the black and Hispanic communities, are saying, we're done. We're not voting Democrat again. Under Trump, I had a great job. I had job security. I had money in the bank. There was no wars, and we had a great booming economy, and our border was secure. Biden is handing the election to Trump. Trump doesn't even have to. He just had 3,500 people in the Bronx, and that is a deep blue area, the Bronx in New York.
Aaron Tobin, Mary Waters, going to be back on the other side of the break with some final thoughts. Final thoughts, Councilwoman?
Well, first of all, let's do all that we can to protect the consumers. It is Congress' job to do that. President Biden does not make the laws. Congress can change those laws.
Aaron Tobin.
President Biden should stop making the laws like he decimated the oil industry. Thankfully, all the damage that Biden has done to this economy, which everyone is feeling, Trump can reverse it, and he will when he's reelected.
Charlie Langton.
Let's have those interest rates stop going up, because I think that will be a very big push for the economy, for the average person to buy what they have to buy.
Everyone deserves a piece of this American dream, and that includes everybody watching, regardless of how much you make, right? Well, that does it for this edition of Let It Rip.
The Let It Rip discussion continues online. Sound off on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, or fox2detroit.com.